Well, hey Jubilee, welcome to our afternoon teaching video where we're striving to know what we believe and why we believe it. I wonder if some of you remember how common it was in the past for Christians to put the initials DV behind certain sentences. The initials DV represent Deo Volonte. It's a Latin expression which means the Lord willing. And it used to be quite common, at least when I was growing up, that people would put DV at the end of all kinds of different sentences. It got to the point even that I remember you could get sometimes birthday cards or birthday invitations, that people would invite you to their birthday party and they would say, "My mom and dad will drive you home after dinner, DV, the Lord willing." People would sometimes even use it in their speech, in their talk, where they would say, "Yeah, we're planning to do this DV." We don't do that so much anymore, and I wonder if we've lost something in the middle of it. DV, the Lord willing, just comes from a passage in the book of James. So in James chapter 4, we read the following. James chapter 4, starting at verse 13, says this: "Come now, you who say, 'Today or tomorrow we'll go to such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that.'" In other words, you don't really understand what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen in your life. You don't know if your plans will turn out for good or for bad. So you ought to say, the Lord wills. In other words, everything comes to us in the hand of our Father. Everything comes to us according to God's will, and so we need to recognize that in everyday life. That was the Bible text behind that phenomenon of people writing DV behind a whole host of different sentences. Really, it expresses what in Christianity we call the doctrine of God's providence. The idea that God has a fatherly, sovereign control over all things. That God is holding all of our life in his hands, and he gives the good as well as the bad to us in those fatherly hands. So maybe by the end of this little video, you'll start using the initials DV behind some of your sentences or even in your speech. Providence. Providence is a beautiful doctrine, and in God's providence, we've come to Lord's Day 10 in our study of the Heidelberg Catechism, which is all about providence. You can think about providence as we're studying it today a little bit in this way. Some of you used to be into scrapbooking, not digital scrapbooking, but real physical scrapbooking, and you could buy these sets of stamps, and you dip those in your ink pad, and you can stamp things on paper. Imagine that you had a stamp that said DV, Deo Volonte, the Lord willing. Really, that stamp ought to be a stamp that you stamp all over your life, on the good things and on the bad things, on the things that you like and the things that you don't like. That your whole life and your whole being is stamped with this scrapbooking stamp of Deo Volonte, the Lord wills. Let's have a look at what the Catechism has to say in Lord's Day 10. Lord's Day 10. Question and answer 27. What do you understand by the providence of God? God's providence is his almighty and ever-present power, whereby with his hand he still upholds heaven and earth and all creatures, and so governs them, that leaf and blade, rain and drought, fruitful and barren years, food and drink, health and sickness, riches and poverty, indeed all things come to us not by chance, but by his fatherly hand. What does it benefit us to know that God has created all things and still upholds them by his providence? We can be patient in adversity, thankful in prosperity, and with a view to the future we can have a firm confidence in our faithful God and Father that no creature shall separate us from his love. For all creatures are so completely in his hand that without his will they cannot so much as move. This is the doctrine of God's providence. I'd like to speak about two things with you today, because the doctrine of providence is a doctrine that's, on the one hand, extremely comforting. It's something that Christians have held on to throughout the centuries, especially during tough times. And at the same time, it's a doctrine that can be difficult. It can be a doctrine that causes us to ask questions and to have doubts and struggles with this doctrine. So let's talk about the difficulty, and then we'll talk about the comfort. So When it comes to the difficulty, the big question or the big difficulty that we have with this doctrine is, well, if all things, good and bad, come to us in the hand of our Father, I mean, how can it be that the Lord also gives us bad things in our life? How can it be that also COVID-19 and COVID restrictions come to us in the hand of God, his fatherly hand? And so I'd like to just point out three different ways that that you can try to deal with this difficult question, this uneasiness that you might have with the providence of God. The first thing is this: the question, how can bad things come to us in the hand of God, can be reversed or changed to be posed in this way: how can good things come to us in the hand of God? And actually, I think, biblically speaking, that's an even better question. How is it that the Lord gives us so many good things? Because think about it. Adam and Eve fall into sin in the garden. They eat of the tree of which the Lord told them not to eat, and of which he told them, when you do eat it, you will surely die, a physical death and a spiritual death. And so they disobey the Lord, they rebel against him, they eat of the tree, but then the Lord, instead of immediately killing them, immediately snuffing out their lives, their physical and their spiritual lives, instead he shuns them from the garden so that they don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or the tree of life, sorry, and he gives them more life, he gives them more time. And not only that, he sends them, the message that a Messiah will come who will crush the head of Satan. And since then, humanity has been living purely by the mercy and grace of God. Everything about your life, everything about all of the lives on this planet that have ever been, everything about creation around you comes to you purely out of God's mercy and God's grace. Every breath that you take is pure grace, because of sin, humanity ought to have been snuffed out. God, could have just punished us with eternal death in that very instant, and instead he's been extending his mercy in so many ways. Every breath that you take, every plane that takes off and then lands again safely, every blink of your eye, every beat of your heart, every safe car drive that you ever had, all these things just come to you by God's pure grace and mercy. How is it that the Lord is allowing so much goodness and so much mercy and so many beautiful things in the world? How is it that he gives us all those things when we deserve the opposite, when as sinners we deserve nothing but condemnation and punishment and death? You see, when you think about this question along those lines, it helps you reorientate your thoughts a little bit and lowers a little bit of your angst around the question, well, how does bad things happen to us? It helps you recognize that, well, really, we only deserve bad things, but the Lord is being gracious to us and merciful to us every single day. I think that's a little bit what James is getting at too. The text that we read in James is immediately followed by the Lord saying, we ought not to be arrogant. Don't arrogantly think that you can go about the world doing all these good things. These things come to you only by the grace of God. They come with DV stamped on them. The Lord wills that this should happen today in his pure grace. And that ought to make you really humble. Ought to make you really humble and to recognize that the Lord rules this world and everything about my life is pure grace. Second way that you can deal with this question of why do bad things come to me in the hand of God is to think about the cross of Jesus Christ. Think about the cross of Jesus Christ. As the mob comes in the Garden of Gethsemane to arrest Jesus, Jesus in Luke 22 says, "This is your hour and the power of darkness." He recognizes that evil is at work, the power of darkness is having its hour, Satan is at work in this world, bad things are happening. And then you see it really laid out in the book of Acts, for instance, in one of the early Pentecost sermons in Acts chapter 4. So in Acts chapter 4, there's a prayer, and this prayer says very specifically that the cross of Christ was due to evil things. But then it adds something interesting. Acts chapter 4, starting at verse 27, says, "For truly in this city they were gathered together against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel." So in other words, you have the government of the day, and you have the people of the day, and they're all conspiring under the power of darkness to destroy the servant Jesus, the anointed one, the Christ, the one chosen by God. It's an evil act. It's a terrible thing that's happening. And then it says that all these people conspired together to do whatever your hand and your plan had predestined to take place. So here in this prayer, we recognize that, yeah, bad things happen. Satan is at work. People do evil things. The most horrendous, evil, despicable sin of all time, the crucifixion of Jesus, happened and it was a terrible, despicable, hateful thing. And yet also that came according to the plan and the predestination of God. It came to the world in the fatherly hand of God. Jesus himself, recognized this tension between the fact that bad things happen and yet they're also covered by God's providence. When he said, "Lord, let this cup pass from me," and then he said, "But your will be done." He was willing to take that scrapbooking stamp DV and stamp it also on his own life and on the cross. So the cross is an example of God's providence, where something bad and yet something glorious and beautiful comes to us in the hand of the Father. And so if you focus on the cross and recognize that providence is also manifest there, then that helps you deal with it a little bit better in your own life. The last thing I would suggest in order to help you deal with the difficulty of God's providence, how bad things also come to us in the hand of God, is to follow Job's lead. So if you go back to the Old Testament book of Job, Job is attacked by Satan under God's permission, and his family all dies, and he loses everything. He goes bankrupt. He basically loses his business, loses his family, loses his house. He loses everything. And it's specifically that Satan has struck Job. And Job says in Job 2 verse 9, "Shall I curse God for all the evil that God has brought?" His wife wants him to curse God. He says, "Shall I curse God for the evil that he was brought?" He recognized that it's Satan that's doing this, and yet God is in control of that. And then later on in Job says these beautiful words. He says, "Though he slay me, I will hope in him, yet I will argue my ways to his face." Though he slay me, though God is bringing also bad things to me in his hand, I will hope in him, trusting that he's God and he knows best and he is my Father. And then it says, "Yet I will argue my ways to his face." In other words, Job recognizes that this is extremely difficult, that this is a difficult thing to comprehend, that somehow the Lord is allowing, or the Lord is bringing this evil into his life in his fatherly hand. And so he says, well, even though you slay me, even though you bring this bad thing, I will hope in you. I recognize that this comes in your providence. But because I find that tension difficult, because I find this hard to understand, yet I will argue my ways before your face. And so I would encourage you, if you find the doctrine of providence difficult, if you find this something that's difficult to understand, difficult to deal with in your life, I would suggest you think about the other question: how is it that God allows so much good in this world? To change your orientation of your thinking a little bit, that you'd focus on the cross and recognize that God's providence, both good and evil coming in the hand of God, is also found there. And then follow Job's lead and be willing to express your disagreement or your difficulty or your struggle with this doctrine to God before his face, also in prayer. That's the difficulty of the doctrine of providence. Now let's talk about the awesome comfort of the doctrine of providence. That comes in the second question and answer of this Lord's Day. And here too I want to talk about three things. Providence is comforting because it teaches us to be patient in bad times, thankful in good times, and confident in anxious times. It teaches you to be patient in good times, thankful in bad times, and confident in anxious times. So let's first talk about patient in bad times, or as the Catechism puts it, being patient in adversity. I wonder how patience is going in your life right now. I think with all the stuff that's going on in our lives right now, we really need to meditate on this doctrine of providence and to meditate on the truth of providence that makes us patient. When things are going really difficult in your life, when things are going difficult in a country like it's going difficult in Canada right now, we need to remember that our lives are not just sort of randomly blowing in the winds of absurd chance. Neither are our lives being controlled by the power of Satan or controlled by the demonic. Our lives have DV stamped on them. The Lord willing. It is all of our lives come to us according to the will of God in his fatherly hand. You know, Job has everything destroyed in his life. All of his children die. Everything is taken away from him. But he himself, he's not entirely crushed. He doesn't go off and commit suicide. He doesn't, utterly despair. Instead, he says, the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I remember when I was just a teenager, I attended a funeral of someone who had lost 2 sons. And they lost one son earlier, and then years later, the second son. And at the graveside, the father who was burying his second son quoted those words from Job. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And like Job, he wasn't entirely destroyed. This horrific thing that had happened to him and his family did not entirely destroy him. He was able to stand in the midst of that and be patient in adversity by trusting the providence of God, that somehow this also came to him in the hand of his Father. So what are some of the difficult stuff that's going on in your lives right now, brothers and sisters? You've got COVID stuff happening. What else is going on difficult in your life? Whatever it is, your life is not swaying in the winds of absurd change. Your life is being held in the providential fatherly hand of God. Your life, even the difficult things, has DV stamped on it. So take a deep breath and be patient, because by God's grace, you're going to make it through. The second reason that providence is so comforting is that it can make you thankful in good times, or as the Catechism puts it, it makes you thankful in prosperity. As you well know, there's been lots of social research, psychological research in the last 10, 15 years about happiness. And almost all of the scientists, the researchers who study this agree that a key ingredient to happiness is to be thankful, to live a thankful life. And providence gives you something to be thankful for. Providence gives you something, or someone to be thankful to, I should say. And so it's worth repeating again that it's important in your life to develop a practice of prayerful thanksgiving. It's a good practice to start your day and then end your day in thanksgiving and bringing to mind the things that you're thankful for. So you might wake up in the morning and thank the Lord for breath in your lungs, for a beating heart, for eyes that can see, a nose that can smell, for ears that can hear, for all of your senses. You might end your day by asking around your family, what was good about your day? What are the things that you give thanks for? That's not just good for your mental health, that's also obedience to the Lord. It's being thankful in prosperity, understanding that all things, including the good things, come to you in the hand of your Heavenly Father. All that psychological research, all that social research about happiness is just confirming what is taught in the Heidelberg Catechism and in Scripture. So thank God for the big things in your life, and also thank God for the little things, just the little beautiful, little glimmers, even momentary things. If you're someone who lives with a lot of pain, for instance, thank the Lord for those moments where the pain is bearable, because those were good. Thank the Lord for those moments where, despite some of the sadness and distress in your life, you had a moment where you laughed at a joke, or you were able to laugh with a friend or with a family member. Thank the Lord for the comfort of having a dog or a cat sleep on your bed with you. Thank the Lord for the moments when you're struggling against sin and you resist, even if it's for a short amount of time. That's a beautiful thing. Thank the Lord for those things. And so perhaps one thing that you could do as you're coming to the end of this video is to end this video and shut it off and spend a little bit of time in thanksgiving, thanking the Lord for all of the good things in your life. That's some of the comfort of providence. It helps you to be patient in adversity and thankful in prosperity. And then I would add this third one, is that providence helps you to be confident in anxious times. Or as the Catechism says, with a view to the future, you can have a firm confidence. So if you think about adversity and also prosperity, adversity and prosperity, good times and bad times, those things happen to us in the present, and then we can think about how they've happened in the past. But the future is where anxiety lives, doesn't it? The future is where worry lives. Worry and future in anxiety are always future orientated. Worry and anxiety are when we say, well, something or someone I love, for instance, might be threatened in the future, or something that I really value will be threatened in the future. I think I've told this story before about the couple who got married, and the wife was always really scared that there was going to be a burglar that were going to enter their house. And so she had her husband set up, cameras and security systems and all kinds of things. And her whole life she's worried there's going to be a burglar who's going to come. There's going to be someone that's going to break in. It never happened. They were happily married 10 years, 15 years. No, nothing ever happened. And then one day in the middle of the night, the husband wakes up and he hears a noise downstairs. So he goes downstairs and walks into the kitchen, and there's a burglar in their kitchen. There's somebody robbing them. And the burglar looks at him, and he looks at the burglar, and then he says, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Please come upstairs to meet my wife. She's been waiting 10 years to meet you." It's a joke. It's a funny story, but the point is this. Anxiety, worry always exists in the future. We worry and we're anxious about something that might happen in the future. A burglar might break in and steal. And maybe that could happen. Not all anxiety and worry is invalid. Bad things do happen in life. But if you spend all of your life worrying and being anxious about what possibly could happen in the future, that worry and that anxiety will rob you of all of those years of your happiness, of your joy, and perhaps of your health. Now, I understand, of course, that when I use the word anxiety, that's a difficult word. That's a complicated word. Some of us in our congregation experience real anxiety, and that's a real struggle with it. So I don't want to be simplistic in this, and I'm not trying to make it out as if, well, if you've got anxiety or you're feeling particularly anxious, well, just snap out of it. What I am trying to say is that there is great truth here in the Heidelberg Catechism. There is great truth. It's not going to solve everybody's anxiety problems, but it is worth meditating on that all of life, past, present, and future, comes to us in the hand of our Father, our good God who loves us. And when you understand that and meditate on that, then you can have more confidence for the future. And then what exactly is that confidence in the future that we're speaking about? Well, look at what the Lord's Day says. It says this: we can be patient in adversity, thankful in a prosperity, and with a view to the future, we can have a firm confidence that in our faithful God and Father, that no creature shall separate us from his love. You want to know something interesting? This is the only instance in the whole Heidelberg Catechism where love, God's love, is specifically mentioned. The Catechism speaks about God's love in all kinds of different ways, but this is the only explicit reference in the whole Catechism to God's love. The Heidelberg Catechism connects God's providence, that all things come to us in God's sovereign fatherly hand, the good and the bad. It connects that with God's love. You sort of think of that scrapbook stamp that I was thinking about, the DV stamp. If I was to make the stamp, I would put DV and I'd put it in a love heart. Because the will of the Lord for our lives comes to us in his loving fatherly hand. It gives us confidence that no matter what we face in life, nothing, not COVID or COVID restrictions or any of the difficulties that you're going through, nothing will separate you from the love of God. And that, of course, comes from these famous words in Romans 8. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword or COVID restrictions or whatever difficulties you're facing in life? As it is written, for your sake we're being killed all day long, we're regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. No. In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I'm sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, or rulers, or anything present, nor things to come, present and future, nor powers, nor height or depth, nor anything in all creation, will be able to separate us from the love of God in Jesus Christ our Lord. That's what the doctrine of providence is based on. In good times and in bad times and in anxious times, we remember this. The love of Christ has been stamped on our lives with the letters DV, the Lord will, and Lord willing, the Lord wills. All of it comes to us in his fatherly hands. Or you could sum it up this way. The words of a little plaque that have been hanging in my parents' bathroom for as long as I can remember. The will of God will never take you where the grace of God will not keep you. Let's pray together. Our dear Lord, Father in heaven, we pray, Lord, that you would help us to be thankful when times are good, that you would help us to be patient when times are bad, and when we're feeling anxious about the future, you would remind us and help us to have a firm confidence that nothing that comes to us in our lives can separate us from the love of God in Jesus Christ, because it comes to us in your fatherly hands. In Jesus' tender and holy name we pray. Amen. God bless you, brothers and sisters, and keep on striving to know what you believe and why you believe it.